안녕하세요. 매일매일 운동하기를 실천하고 있는 동탄 왕고입니다. 아, 어제 술을 마셨는데 같이 술 먹은 그 친구 중에 한 명이 헬스 트레이너입니다. 몸이 막 손이 막. 근데 이제 동탄 왕고를 구독했는지 모르겠어요. 이 윤재 이놈이 아주 그냥 내 영상 잘 보지도 않으면서 댓글 한번 달았다고 유세를 떨고 있지만, 그래서 오늘 대충 하려고 그랬는데 팔굽혀펴기랑 스쿼트랑 윗몸이 일으키기랑 그 모든 구성을 꽉꽉 채워서 30분 내지 20분 한번 해보도록 하겠습니다. 날씨가 많이 더워졌어요. 지금 창문을 열어놓은 지 한 10분이 지났는데도 아직도 집안 온도가 28도입니다. 그래서 한번 운동을 해보겠습니다. 30분 열심히 하고 샤워 싹 하면은 좋아지겠죠. 근데 지금 너무 피곤해. 오늘 어저께 잠을 3시간밖에 안 잤습니다, 여러분. 운동할게요. 운동해야지.
Making the rounds on the web, so it gives you a better understanding of what took place overnight. Some of the arrests that went down actually happened here in Times Square. But when you take a step back and you look at it nationally, it really was yet another round of these fiery clashes between protesters and police. And when you hear from demonstrators, what you're hearing from them, it's that constant call for justice. A wave of protests over the death of George Floyd spread from coast to coast on Saturday and spilled over into the morning.
I want to be able to go in a white neighborhood and feel safe. I want to be able, when a cop is driving behind me, I don't have to clench and be tense, okay? I want to be able just to be free and not have to think about every step I take.
Authorities responded to a fifth night of protests while at least 25 cities across the U.S. enacted curfews. Peaceful protests took place, as well as acts of vandalism in cities large and small. Numerous states have either activated or requested National Guard forces to assist their cities. There was a scuffle in Times Square when several New York City police officers in helmets took down a protester to effect an arrest, and an NYPD vehicle could be seen burning near Union Square. In another incident, an NYPD vehicle appeared to drive into a railing blocking protesters after driving to
미국이
a
흑인 폭동이 일어나가지고 막 이렇게 하고 있는데 경찰차가 사람들을 이렇게 밀고 지나갑니다. 저게 폭력 시위를 하는 것도 참 문제가 있긴 하지만, 사람을 밀어버린다는 거는
The Minnesota National Guard had more than 4,100 citizens soldiers responding to the Twin Cities, according to a tweet from the Guard. The tweet said 10,000 National Guard members are expected to join the response. A group of protesters who were marching from Minneapolis to St. Paul tried to cross the Lake Street Marshall Bridge, but were met with tear gas. Protesters could be seen running back in the direction that they came from. CNN's Miguel Marquez nearby as protesters held their hands in the air as some people shot off fireworks. Law enforcement let off tear gas and the crowd scattered. Cars were set on fire in Los Angeles, Seattle, and Miami. Members of the California National Guard were deployed to LA to support law enforcement authorities amid protests, Mayor Eric Garcetti said in a statement to CNN. One demonstration in Los Angeles led to clashes between police and protesters. Police vehicles were vandalized by some protesters who kicked in the windows or sprayed the cars with graffiti. Police fired rubber bullets at demonstrators who chanted Black Lives Matter and George Floyd. Looting could also be seen as protesters went under a metal gate inside a store and walked out with various merchandise in Los Angeles. There was also extensive looting in Philadelphia. Protesters there also vandalized the statue of former Mayor Police Commissioner Frank Rizzo in front of the city's Municipal Services Building, as seen in live aerials from CNN affiliate KYW. Philadelphia police say protests at City Hall and the Art Museum began peacefully before a group of others began committing criminal acts, including vandalism, said authorities. Aerial footage from CNN affiliate WLS showing protesters in Chicago vandalizing police vehicles, some throwing water bottles at police officers in riot gear, while others were seen lifting police barricades and throwing them at police cars. At a press conference last night, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot said that she had been engaged the past 6 hours in, quote, watching the tragedy unfold in our city. It started out as a peaceful protest and has now developed into criminal conduct. In Washington, D.C., U.S. Secret Service police vehicles near the White House were vandalized by protesters with graffiti, seen in video shot by CNN. In another incident, a fire could be seen burning behind the historic Hay Adams Hotel near the White House. In Atlanta, members of the National Guard gathered at Lenox Square Mall after the police department said that it would be assisted by about 20 other agencies to monitor activity and protect retail centers. Downtown, the Atlanta Police Department said one of their officers appears to have been struck by someone riding an ATV and sustained significant injuries as a result. The Georgia governor signed an executive order on Saturday night authorizing the activation of up to 3,000 National Guard troops statewide. Kept calling for the activation in advance of several planned protests on Sunday. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine activated the Ohio National Guard to respond to protests in Columbus, according to a release from his office. Columbus City Council President Shannon Hardin says she and Democratic U.S. Representative Joyce Beatty of Ohio were among those sprayed during the protests in Columbus Saturday morning. Beatty tweeted a photo sequence of the incident. Democratic Representative John Lewis releasing a statement Saturday night saying he understands protesters' pain, but he called on them to refrain from rioting. I know your pain, your rage, your sense of despair and hopelessness. Justice has, indeed, been denied for too long. Rioting, looting, and burning is not the way. Organize, demonstrate, sit in, stand up, vote. Be constructive, not destructive. History has proven time and again that nonviolent, peaceful protest is the way to achieve the justice and equality that we all deserve. A quick final note on that dramatic video showing the NYPD driving into that crowd. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio reacting, saying that he wished that those officers would have found perhaps a different approach, but then ultimately he did say, quote, that protesters did the wrong thing surrounding that police car, period. It's a statement that's certainly not going to be well received by many here in New York, including Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who tweeted that that kind of response is unacceptable. Victor Christie.
Hello, Sandoval, there in New York. Thanks so much. Let's go to Minneapolis, where this all started and continues now. Police there used tear gas to disperse some crowds there. They say that some of the people started throwing things at police.
Josh Campbell joins us with the latest from Minneapolis this morning. So, Josh, we know, as Polo was talking about, there is a National Guard presence there. Have you seen that perhaps over the last couple of days that's changed anything?
Yeah, we certainly have, Christy, a noticeable change in the posture by law enforcement. But overnight, that doesn't seem to have affected some of the rioting and some of the looting in certain places. We're here at what used to be a retail shopping center. You can see one building here was set ablaze. The water there on the ground from the sprinklers, likely the only thing saving this building, putting out that fire. But as we walk here, you can see, I mean, this is a scene that we've seen in so many neighborhoods, and that is graffiti. I want to show you just kind of a tale of two experiences here. This is a broom and dustpan. This is left behind from members of the community who were here yesterday. Rubble and rubbish destruction from the day before. But overnight, we see more of that very same thing. Now, in this area, we're across from the police precinct here, which is not far from where police officers took George Floyd into custody. He later died in custody as well, we know, sparking all of this violence that we've seen. This overnight was the scene of another clash with protesters, and you can see here, protesters brought in rocks that were then used to throw across towards police officers. There was a massive show of force here last night by law enforcement officers. You see up near this police station, they've erected barricades and barriers. There's razor wire here now, and one thing which is not typical of a police department, this morning you can see behind me, officers on the roof keeping watch, looking for anyone who may be coming in to this area. And I can tell you, we had our own experience, my crew this morning. Whenever we arrived, our caravan, we were immediately met and confronted by police officers. They wanted us to identify ourselves. They were very polite and very cordial, but they wanted to know who we were. Interestingly enough, they told us that they saw us coming. There's a helicopter above right now that's in what's called stealth mode, that's keeping tabs on different neighborhoods, looking at people that are moving in and out, trying to determine if there are any agitators. They saw our caravan coming time. They wanted to see if we were coming for a peaceful purpose or possibly to cause some kind of destruction. That's what they're on the alert for right now. And this all stems from the governor saying that this neighborhood will be seeing overwhelming force. They're certainly seeing that today.
We also heard from the governor, similar to what Polo described, hearing from the mayor of Chicago, people who are coming in from out of town or people who don't share the values of those who have protested.
Yeah, exactly. Victor. That's one thing that we've continued to hear both from residents and from the politicians. You can tell in just listening to the voices of some of the elected officials here, they're trying to make that point. They're trying to both assure their community that they're doing what they can to try to stop the violence, but they're also sending a message to the protesters, to the outside agitators, especially those who, in their view, they're saying are trying to hijack this peaceful protest that's been pointing out the alleged police brutality against George Floyd. Let's listen here to how the governor explain that difference between the community and those who are coming from outside.
Minnesotans, this is a challenging time. Our great cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul are under assault by people who do not share our values, who do not value life and the work that went into this, and certainly are not here to honor George Floyd. And they need to see today that that line will stop and that order needs to be restored.
Now, as we stand here now, smoke continues to billow in the distance behind us, closer to downtown. There were fires that were set at night. The fire department obviously doing a repeat of what they did the day before, putting out hot spots. With that call for overwhelming force that we've seen, and now the National Guard being fully deployed here in this area, again, it's yet to be seen whether we'll continue to see more of this violence, more of this destruction, and we'll obviously be keeping a sharp eye on the police and their response as they try to safeguard these neighborhoods. Victor and Christy.
All righty, yeah, take good care there, Josh Campbell and your team. Thank you.
Josh, thank you. Let's say good morning now to Michael Harriet, writer for The Roots. Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Certainly. You're more than a writer. You're a student of history. And I want to just start here. Why is this becoming this national moment when similar situations, we think back to 2016 with Philando Castile, unarmed black man, or a man who had not pulled a gun, who was killed on camera. Terrence Quinter, who did not, he was unarmed, he was killed on camera months apart. That did not become a national moment. Why is this happening now?
I think it's because, I think Malcolm X described it as a powder keg. I think other people have described it as a pot on a stove. At some point, it has to boil over. It has to explode. And that's this moment. When we see all of these people asking the questions like that, I don't understand what they thought would happen if you keep raining injustice and chaos and violence on one community for years and years and years. It will eventually, you're going to have to reap it. Even the Bible says it, right? It's going to explode. You can't rain injustice on one person and not expect reciprocity. So this is what America has reaped, right? It is getting back what black people have experienced, the violence and the chaos and the injustice, right? Like they want to make sense out of a protest against something that does not make sense. So I think that the question is, why wouldn't this happen?
And why hasn't it happened sooner?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because I think what people should be praising is the remarkable long suffering of black people to take this day in and day out and day out. Right? We saw it in Georgia. We saw it in Louisville, and now we're seeing it in Minneapolis. Like, we keep taking this. These are only the cases that make national news. These are the only cases that people hear about. But this happens in communities of black people every day. And so, at some point it has to explode. And I guess it's time for this. And what we have to realize too, also, is that this country is only just seeing and reaping a microscopic fraction of the injustice and chaos and violence that we experience every day. So that is a great question. Why hasn't it happened sooner?
Let me ask you about the tactics, though, because and I looked at some of your statements on Twitter, and I want to read one here. politicians and police officers and civil rights leaders have condemned the damage, the looting, the arson, especially. You tweeted this. So if you want to change the system, history has repeatedly told us how to do it. Burn that shit down.
Right. I mean, when you talk about most of the change, let's go back through history, right? So we can start with the Boston Tea Party. What was that besides looting and rioting, right? The reason that black people have been suffering injustice for these years goes back to Reconstruction, when a national terror cell of white terrorists rained down injustice on us and terrified us for years until the federal government conceded that they will be able, that the South could treat black people any way they want in exchange for them installing Rutherford B. Hayes as president. When you see the civil rights move, let's go back to right after.
Let me stay here. Let me stay here because I want to ask you about the civil rights movement. We hear from Congressman John Lewis, who says that the destruction of property, the setting fires, the looting, the graffiti is not the way to accomplish the goal. It is a distraction. Your response to that assertion from Congressman Lewis?
Well, I respect John Lewis more than, almost anyone on earth. But I think that, the people who John Lewis is talking to, right, they forget how, because history has whitewashed the past and because our education system, the civil rights movement was very violent, right? It was just us who the violence was inflicted on, right? I mean, John Lewis had his skull cracked. He was firebombed, right? And so, one, why wouldn't you expect reciprocity for that? And two, I guess, so we should sit back and keep taking that, and there is no indication that there will be the same kind of thing on the other side from white America. In other words, we can't expect how would we know that white America will have some kind of sorrow and some kind of empathy for us when we just keep taking these brutal slayings in our communities every day? Because that's what it was, right? One of the little talked about things about the civil rights movement is that the role that television played in it, because America started seeing how brutal the South and this country was treating black people.
It was unavoidable.
And so John Lewis is right.
Televisions across the country. Listen, I have so much more I wanted to get to, Michael, but we've run out of time. I thank you so much for being with us this morning to be part of the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Certainly. Conversation continues tonight at 8 Eastern right here on CNN. Don Lemon is leading an important conversation. I Can't Breathe, Black Men Living and Dying in America. Again, 8 Eastern tonight, right here on CNN. You'll want to watch that.
Absolutely. So we're headed to the nation's capital. Live for you next. The National Guard's been activated to help protect the White House there.
As the world begins to reopen, there is something else that comes to mind. Full throttle business travel.
Bag weighs 19.5 kilos, are you sure?
The life of a business traveller.
Going to bring you the bags?
All those comings and goings. To be sure, we are not going to enjoy this kind of business travel anytime soon.
Business travel is the last thing that's going to recover.
I've caught up with Ben Schlappig, who writes 1 mile at a time. It's time to commiserate.
What are you doing to stay sane as a traveller?
And for one, I'm wearing my airline pajamas at home. I'm listening to airline boarding music. I have my Polaris blanket here. Very cozy.
The airlines will not be the same as they were. They'll be a lot smaller. So with your experience and vast experience of travel, how do you expect that to look?
I think for the next few years, obviously demand is going to be way down. I think face masks are probably going to be the norm for a while. I don't think we're going to see this social distancing where the middle seats stay empty, because that's just not sustainable for airlines. Right now, when very few people are flying, but when we're talking about numbers actually recovering to what they were before 2020, seems really unlikely that we're ever going to see social distancing.
As businesses are adjusting to life during a health crisis, many companies are prioritizing philanthropy over profit. The world's largest investment group, BlackRock, has pledged to donate $50 million to support vulnerable people. 18 million of this has already been made available to food banks in Europe, the US, and Asia. French luxury group Kering, which owns a number of fashion brands including Gucci and Yves Saint Laurent, is switching production from clothing to medical supplies. Its factories will supply over 4 million surgical masks and over 50,000 hospital uniforms. While the beauty brand Estee Lauder has given a $2 million grant to Doctors Without Borders. For more stories of the people making a difference, to find out how you can impact your world, go to cnn.com/impact.
Sochi. So excited about Rio, so focused. What do you see as the biggest challenges? You were the overwhelming favourite heading into the final. How did the match play out for you? You're used to winning. How do you keep it going?
Lewis celebrating at Silverstone. The game will lift women's football. I'm Amanda Davis in Rio, Doha, Pyeongchang, Moscow, Tokyo.
So there were clashes between police and protesters last night as there were crews battling fire in the nation's capital.
Yeah, this was a fire behind the historic Hay Adams Hotel near the White House. Fire crews say that this started in a construction area, no damage to the hotel, but the building was covered in graffiti, including some specifically directed at the president. CNN's White House reporter Sarah Westwood with us. Second night outside of the White House, protesters. What happened?
That's right, Victor and Christy, the second night of unrest here in the nation's capital. But unlike on Friday night, law enforcement, primarily Secret Service, was keeping those protesters far away from the White House. Pennsylvania Avenue in front of the White House was closed down, and those protesters were eventually kept out of Lafayette Park across the street from the White House. And that's because they wanted to create as large a buffer as possible between those demonstrators and the White House. There were some skirmishes, though, that broke out between law enforcement officers and some of those protesters. At certain points, pepper spray was even used on that crowd. And as you mentioned, a fire did break out near that historic Hay Adams Hotel. It appeared to start on some sort of scaffolding near a construction site near that hotel. That hotel is actually just a block or two away from the White House, so very close. Luckily, the hotel was not damaged, but there was graffiti drawn on that hotel, and also nearby the windows were smashed in of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation building, also near the White House. So we did see more unrest here in the nation's capital last night, including near the White House, where, by the way, the National Guard was activated to help keep the peace. Victor and Christine.
We did see the president yesterday in Florida for the SpaceX launch. Did he, at any time, in speaking with the press, react to any of the protests that we've been seeing?
Christy, we did hear the president address some of this while he was speaking after the launch of the Dragon into space, which he watched yesterday. He addressed some of the unrest that we've been seeing, some of the protests. It was a really striking contrast, though, to the tone that we've been seeing in the many tweets that he sent about the protests and about the George Floyd case. I want you to take a listen to what he said during his formal remarks yesterday.
I stand before you as a friend and ally, to every American seeking justice and peace. And I stand before you in firm opposition to anyone exploiting this tragedy to loot, rob, attack, and menace. Healing, not hatred, justice, not chaos, are the mission at hand.
And later, the president took to Twitter to criticize the Democratic mayor of Minneapolis for not getting protests in that city under control fast enough. He wrote, "The National Guard has been released in Minneapolis to do the job that the Democrat mayor couldn't do. Should have been used 2 days ago.
못하겠습니다.
And there would not have been
오늘은
damage, and
여기까지.
the police headquarters would not have been taken over and ruined. Great job by the National Guard." Now, of course, the president